Justin Trudeau, a very tyrannical narcissist. Justin Pierre James Trudeau was born on December the 25th, 1971. He's 50 years of age, and there be those, given his birthday, that would suggest that he behaves like he is Jesus Christ. He's a Canadian politician who is the 23rd and current Prime Minister of Canada since November 2015, and the leader of the Liberal Party since April 2013. Trudeau is the second youngest Prime Minister in Canadian history after Joe Clark. He is also the first to be the child or other relative of a previous holder of the post, as the eldest son of Pierre Trudeau. Born in Ottawa, he graduated from McGill University in 1994 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Literature. Then, in 1998, acquired a Bachelor of Education degree from the University of British Columbia. After graduating, he taught French, humanities, maths and drama at the secondary school level in Vancouver. Initially relocating back to Montreal in 2002 to further his studies, advocacy work related to youth and environmental issues would be his primary focus, serving as a chair for the youth charity Katimavik and as a director of the not-for-profit Canadian Avalanche Association. In 2006, he was appointed as chair of the Liberal Party's task force on youth renewal. After a successful campaign during the 2008 federal election, he was elected to represent the riding of Papineau in the House of Commons. He served as the Liberal Party's official opposition critic for youth and multiculturalism in 2009, and the following year he became critic for citizenship and immigration. In 2011, he was appointed as a critic for secondary education and sport. Trudeau won the leadership of the Liberal Party in April 2013 and led his party to victory in the 2015 federal election, moving his third-place Liberals from 36 seats to 184 seats, the largest ever numerical increase by a party in a Canadian federal election. What was behind all of that? Was this inspirational and charismatic leadership, or was he just lucky with regard to circumstance? As Prime Minister, major government initiatives he undertook during his first term included legalising recreational marijuana through the Cannabis Act, attempting Senate appointment reform by establishing the Independent Advisory Board for Senate appointments and establishing the federal carbon tax, while grappling with ethics, investigations concerning the Aga Khan affair and later the SNC Lavalin affair. In foreign policy, Trudeau's government negotiated trade deals such as the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, and the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, and signed the Paris Agreement on climate change. Trudeau led the Liberals to consecutive minority governments in the 2019 and 2021 federal elections, despite losing the popular vote in both elections. He faced criticism for embarking upon what might have been seen as a purely egotistical attempt at the 2020 federal elections, costing huge amounts of money to achieve, that some would say, not a lot. During his second term, he confronted the COVID-19 pandemic in Canada, announced an assault-style weapons ban in response to the 2020 Nova Scotia attacks, and was cleared of wrongdoing during a third ethics investigation surrounding the WE charity scandal. In foreign policy, he led Canada's failed 2020 bid on temporary membership of the United Nations Security Council. During his third term, he has responded to the Freedom Convoy protests and invoked the Emergencies Act in response to the demonstrations in Ottawa, the first time the Act has been brought into force since it was enacted in 1988 and has brought considerable criticism with regard to his premiership. Trudeau and the rest of his government were sworn in by the Governor-General David Johnston on November the 4th, 2015, and he said that his first legislative priority was to lower taxes for middle-income Canadians and raise taxes for the top 1% of income earners after Parliament was reconvened on December the 3rd, 2015. Trudeau also issued a statement promising to rebuild relations with Indigenous peoples in Canada and run an open, ethical and transparent government. Are those the behaviours of an empathic individual, perhaps? Or are they merely the behaviours of someone who believes himself to be empathic, but is not? Or someone who knows the value of appearing empathic, despite wanting to retain an iron grip upon his country? On November the 5th, 2015, during the first Liberal caucus meeting since forming a majority government, the party announced that it would reinstate the mandatory long-form census that had been scrapped in 2010, effective with the 2016 census. Trudeau was criticised by opposition members in November 2016 for his fundraising tactics, which they saw as a cash-for-access schemes. Perhaps a sense of entitlement in behaving that way and a lack of accountability, or unmerited criticism. Trudeau attended fundraisers where attendees paid an upward of $1,500 for access to him and other cabinet ministers. Is that an abuse of power and position? In some instances, the events were attended by foreign businessmen who needed government approval for their businesses. Trudeau defended his fundraising tactics, saying that they were not in breach of any ethics rules. He also stated that he was lobbied at the fundraisers, but not influenced. Deflection, perhaps. In 2017, Trudeau introduced legislation that would eliminate such exclusive events by requiring increased transparency for political fundraisers. In January 2017, the Ethics Commissioner Mary Dawson began an investigation into Trudeau for a vacation he and his family took to the Aga Khan's private island in the Bahamas. Residual benefit, maybe. The Ethics Commissioner's report, released in December 2017, found that Trudeau had violated 4 provisions of the Conflict of Interest Act: poor boundary recognition or honest mistake, sense of entitlement, or a collateral consequence of trying to do the right thing. He became the first sitting Prime Minister to break federal conflict of interest rules. In February 20, Trudeau was criticised when his government invited Khalistani nationalist Jasper Atwal to the Canadian High Commission's dinner party in Delhi. Atwal had previously been convicted for the shooting and attempted murder of Indian Cabinet Minister Malkiat Singh Sidhu in 1986, as well as the assault on former BC Premier Ujjal Dosanjh in 1985. Following the dinner, the PMO rescinded the invitation and apologised for the incident. During his time as Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau has been the target of multiple death threats and assassination plots. The Trudeau government's economic policy initially relied on increased tax revenues to pay for increased government spending. While the government didn't balance the budget in its first term, it reduced Canada's debt-to-GDP ratio every year until 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Trudeau's progressive social policy has included strong advocacy for feminism and abortion rights. His government introduced the bill that made conversion therapies illegal in Canada. Again, does this underpin empathic credentials, or is it somebody who believes that he's empathic but actually isn't, or somebody that knows the benefit of an empathic facade and is a cold and calculated method of winning votes whilst behaving in alternative methods? In his first term, Canada set targets to welcome an increased number of immigrants and refugees. Canada introduced the right to medically assisted dying in 2016 and legalised cannabis for recreational use in 2018. In 2021, Trudeau announced the creation of a national child care plan with the intention of reducing daycare fees for parents down to $10 a day per child within 5 years. His environmental policy including introducing new commitments to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 30% before 2030 and to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. His main tool for reaching this target is a federal carbon pricing policy. Trudeau's parliament also adopted legislation for marine conservation, banning 6 common single-use plastic products, and strengthening environmental impact assessments. However, Trudeau is in favour of oil and gas pipelines to bring Canadian fossil fuel resources to foreign markets. Trudeau enjoyed good relations with the like-minded United States President Barack Obama, despite Trudeau's support for the Keystone Pipeline, which was rejected by the Democratic president. Trudeau's first foreign policy challenges including follow-through on his campaign promise to withdraw Canadian air support from the Syrian civil war and to welcome 25,000 Syrian war refugees. When Donald Trump became president, Canada-US relations deteriorated. Is this as a consequence of an empathic individual reacting to the upper-lesser B behaviours of Donald Trump, or narcissists colliding, perhaps? The Trump administration forced the renegotiation of NAFTA to create the CUSMA, in which Canada made significant concessions in allowing increased imports of American milk, weakening Canada's dairy supply management system. Donald Trump also implemented tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium, to which Trudeau retaliated by imposing tariffs on American steel, aluminium, and a variety of other American products. Canada's relationship with China also deteriorated during Justin Trudeau's time as Prime Minister, a reaction perhaps to any threat to control, or a sensible approach with regard to a totalitarian regime. The turmoil led to the arrest of Meng Wanzhou at the Vancouver International Airport in December 2018 at the behest of the United States, and the arrest of Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig in China 12 days later. As these three individuals were released at the same exact time in September 2021, many observers speculated they were exchanged as part of a deal between the United States and China. In a similar fashion, Canada's relationship with Saudi Arabia was also put under strain, as human rights groups called on Trudeau to stop selling military equipment to that country under a deal struck by the Harper government. In 2018, Saudi Arabia recalled its Canadian ambassador and froze trade with the country in response to Canada's call for the Saudis to release opposition blogger Raif Badawi. However, in 2019, Canada doubled its weapons sales to Saudi Arabia, despite a moratorium on export permits following the killing of the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi and mounting civilian deaths from the Saudi Arabian-led intervention in Yemen. Political expedience or hypocrisy? The pursuit of residual benefits at the expense of morals? You will be the judge. There is the SNC-Lavalin affair, the issues arising out of the 2029 federal election, and of course most recently Trudeau's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The consequence of his behaviours has led to the 2022 convoy protest. The Canada Convoy protest, called the Freedom Convoy, is an ongoing protest in Canada against the COVID-19 vaccine requirements for truckers to re-enter the country by land, introduced by the Canadian government on the 15th of January 2022. Originally composed of several routes traversing all of the Canadian provinces, the truck convoys converged on Ottawa. On January the 29th, the first day of protest at Parliament Hill, Prime Minister Trudeau moved to an undisclosed location. Sensible move to preserve his safety in light of unmerited hostility, or the assertion of control by withdrawal, a cowardly response. According to The Guardian, the demonstration developed to express a number of anti-government grievances, particularly against Prime Minister Justin Trudeau himself. On January the 13th, Trudeau called the protests an insult to truth. Is it the case that these protesters are operating in a way which is an insult to truth, or is it an insult to his perception of the truth from an alternative perspective? On February the 3rd, he said that a military response was not in the cards right now. On the February 11th, Reuters reported that Trudeau promised the US quick action regarding protesters who have forcefully blocked the Ambassador Bridge on the US-Canada border, the continent's business land border crossing. Trudeau subsequently indicated that there would be robust police intervention, assertion of control by proxy perhaps, and called for all protesters to go home. Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act on the February the 14th for the first time since it was enacted in 1988 as a result of the public order emergency caused by the demonstrations in Ottawa. He's a devout Catholic, a married man. His mother converted from Anglicanism to Catholicism just before her wedding, and his father was a devout Catholic. Trudeau himself became a lapsed Catholic at age 18. He described his faith during this period as, like so many Catholics across the country, I said, okay, I'm Catholic, I'm of faith, but I'm not just really going to go to church, maybe on Easter, maybe midnight mass at Christmas. Again, is this an individual that utilises his religion as part of a means to manipulate people, picking and choosing when it suits him, or is he just a lapsed Catholic? Justin Trudeau presented as a good-looking, youthful Prime Minister that appeared to come along with trendy, youthful and empathic policies. But a change in turn of events, particularly demonstrated by the arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic, has demonstrated another side to him. Is he a power-hungry individual that will hold on to power at any cost, essentially in a tyrannical fashion? Or is he being unjustly maligned? Join me, H.G. Tudor, as I place Justin Trudeau under the Tudorscope, examining a range of behaviours over a sustained period of time to ask the question, is Justin Trudeau a narcissist? And if he is, what type might he be? I will utilise my unrivalled expertise by scrutinising the evidence, operating to a high evidential standard to address this fundamental question. Join me very soon as we place Justin Trudeau under the Tudorscope and ask the question, is he a very tyrannical narcissist? I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.